It's all alive again at the National Stadium. Speeds. Was he held? Yes! Penalty! So often in the past, Wales have suffered because of penalties in vital matches.
Gordon's there. Field, surely a handball. Penalty kick. It's a penalty kick for Scotland.
Paul Bowden to take it. Oh, and he's hit the crossbar. Sensational from Hal Robson-Kanu.
Bill! Gareth Bale, NBE.
These home forwards are in fighting trim. John Charles again passing to Tapscott. He shoots and it's in. Wales have opened the scoring.
Great jump, free rush! Yes! 1-0!
And Wales have finished with a bit of a swagger.
So welcome, episode 190 of Podcast Pêl-droed. My name is Russell. If episodes were caps, we'd be nestled between Lionel Messi and Luka Modric. Part co-owner of Swansea City, Luka Modric. And I can think of worse places to be nestled. Leon, how are you, sir? You couldn't join us last time. You okay?
Yeah, right. I think maybe I was on holiday at the time in Croatia, perhaps, talking to Luka Modric.
Yeah, which is where I'm off in a couple of days as well. So really grateful that we've been able to find the time to squeeze this in between different summer commitments. Last episode, Hugh and I touched on the passing, sad passing of Joey Jones. It requires and deserves a much more thorough, deeper dive into his career and his life. So that's what we're going to be doing tonight. And you've managed to fix us up with a couple of guests. So welcome back to the podcast to Tim Edwards from Fearless in Devotion podcast, all things Wrexham. Welcome back, Tim. I appreciate you've got a couple of other things on your plate as well tonight, so really grateful for your time. Thank you. How are you?
That's all right, thanks a lot. Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
And we have Andy Dempsey from Innsbruck, so there's a greater Innsbruck contingent here than from anywhere else on this episode. Welcome to the podcast, Andy. How are you?
Yeah, we're taking over. There's a two against two. Yeah.
The Innsbruck Wrexham supporters division. Andy actually had some shirts made up a few years ago before we went to the FA Trophy final. Yeah, back in the non-league days.
Oh yes, well of course, very distant in the rearview mirror, isn't it? I'll hand over to Tim in a moment just to sort of say a little bit about his podcast, and obviously he's done a deeper dive into Joey's career and his association with Wrexham, both as a town, as a club, North Wales, and you can't disassociate the club and the town from his career. We're going to spend a bit more time focusing on the international side of things. But Andy, I mean, so what's the origin story between you two and Innsbruck?
Leon, do you want
If this was the Marvel universe.
So I moved over in October 2009, and we didn't have internet at home yet. So I went out to an internet cafe, if you remember them. So it sounds like something from a completely bygone age, but 16 years ago is not that long ago, I don't think. But anyway, there were still internet cafes back then.
Are you sure it's only 16 years ago you moved? It wasn't 30 years?
No, it was October 2000. No, I know for sure because I'll come to that. But so I was there just checking my emails, and this guy's next to me, and he just picks up his phone and he starts talking to his mate on the phone, and then straight away clock the accent. I'm like, wait a minute, this guy sounds like he's from Wrexham. I'm like, where am I again? I was sort of, the guy sat next to me, and so he got off the phone. I said, all right, sorry, I wasn't eavesdropping or anything. Can I just ask you, are you from North Wales? And he was, yeah, and sort of asked where I was from. Just got talking, and then just been it was the first friend I made here, and just been mates ever since. And then I think it was that was the week that we played Liechtenstein away, one of Toshak's last games as manager. And he was going to the Wales game on the weekend, and then so we ended up going to that, and been to quite a few Wales games since together. and yeah, Wrexham games, some of the big Wrexham games as well. So yeah, that's it. 16 years ago.
Has he remembered it correctly, Andy?
That's pretty bang on that. Yeah, I moved over 2005, so I'm 20 years there. And you lads won't need many guesses to know why I moved in the first place. It's the most obvious, the obvious reason.
You're on the run.
That's the second one.
Oh, right,
most obvious.
sorry.
It was to do with a woman, wasn't it?
It was a woman, basically. Yeah, no woman in Wrexham would have me, so I found my way over here. And yeah, just one day in an internet cafe, and I was speaking to the lads at home. I was arranging to meet a friend in Liechtenstein from Wrexham. And yeah, I just come off the phone, and bizarrely, a lad sitting next to me, "Are you from Wrexham?" Yeah. So yeah, and then I got Lee on a job in the
Yes.
pub I was working in, and then
Yeah.
we just stayed good mates ever since, really. Yeah, so pretty well remembered now.
Well, it's lovely to have you, Andy. I have a similar story. I won't tell it here. It's not the right time about knowing that somebody was from Penarth. It was Christmas Day in New Zealand years and years ago at a barbecue, and I was just like, that accent is just too. In fact, it's not just like Southwest. It's kind of Cardiff. In fact, it's not in Cardiff. I think it's Penarth anyway. It turns out it was. But anyway, Tim, talking about Feel Us in Devotion, do you want to give it a quick plug for those people? I'm sure everybody knows about it. Clearly, if you're a Wrexham fan or got any Wrexham connection. But do you want to give it a plug and maybe give it a flavour of what you were maybe covering in terms of the recent episodes and Joey's passing?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I started, I think it was Boxing Day, about 11 years ago, as a Twitter account then, as it was known as. And just kind of like a fan platform, really. And obviously, over the course of time, that's gravitated into a pod, a colour fanzine, live shows, all sorts of stuff. It's just grown into this monster that none of us really anticipated. So there's 4 of us that do it. So me, Andy, recently, and that combined just to, kind of a round table chat on everything to do with the club. And obviously, we touch on the Wrexham women, we touch on the national team. And everything else in between, really. We just try and keep it as light humour as we can, just as if you were talking about it in the pub, stay humble and address the serious issues in a serious way. But, it's just about enjoying it, having fun, and making sure that at the end of the day, it's only a game. Some people take it way too seriously. Even some of the comments to our latest pod today, it's just, some people are nuts, man. Just crackers. Like, hooked in about several Southampton Salmons today, just saying, well, you're going to go down in that performance. I'm like, well, you're definitely not going to go up on yours. So, we'll split the difference.
That's some brilliant stuff on the last one. Like, you're talking about all these tweets going, oh, welcome to the Championship, Wrexham. And you're being all like, yeah, enjoyed it, thanks. Essentially.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the fact that you're even uttering those words is still weird for us to hear. So please keep saying it so it can, because like in future, if we never ever want to, well, I'm sure some of my Cardiff supporters and mates will feel different, but as far as I'm concerned, you kind of don't want to drop back to where you came from. You've been there and done it. And I think a lot of the Cardiff lads are quite enjoying the idea of going to League One just because they've treaded water in the Championship for so long. So sometimes you've got to take a couple of steps back for a big leap forward, I guess.
It's what Hugh and I were saying on the last episode. Not that we went into depth about Cardiff City. That's for other people to cover, and they do it really, really well. But there was a sense of, actually, do you know what, to go down just to kind of come back up isn't the end of the world. There's some uncertainty about who might end up owning the club, of course. Yeah, a couple of people have sort of said places I've not been to for 10, 20 years, so yeah, why not? So yeah. I watched the game on the mice, on the Eisteddfod mice, and we had Malcolm Allen and Nick Parry sort of live commentating, so they were watching the same screen as us. They had their backs to the crowd, and they were very, very funny, very, very good. And for about 89 and a half minutes, it was good fun, and people were getting into it, and there was some singing and all the rest of it. But quick, you may as well touch on it. How do you think it went, Tim? I mean, does it bode well for the season, or does it maybe reveal a couple of areas that need strengthening, or some areas that need attention from Phil Parkinson and his team, or what?
It's too early to say, really. I mean, one game in, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of players that still don't know each other's names, really. to be perfectly honest, because he did a lot of his business probably the last 17 days, I reckon, before the season started. That's a lot of faces to get on board late on. So, there's a lot of encouraging signs in that game. A big blow, obviously, with Kiefer Moore already suffering a big injury because he was causing Southampton a lot of issues. So, it'll be interesting. That I think Ipswich have got one of their. Is it Akpom that's gone there now, and that might free up the Nathan Broadhead mood, because it's no surprise or no secret that he wants to come here and that Parky wants him here. So that might happen this week. Be interesting to see if it does. So the fact that I'm sat here and our outlay is 12 million quid on players might not seem a lot to people in the wider spectrum of football, but to us it's a ridiculous amount of money, because that's not even. You think that the club was bought for 2 million quid 4 years ago, and now we're spending 12 million quid inside a month. So it's all a little bit wacky and weird. I find this more weirder than the actual takeover itself. It's just very, very surreal. And then I still find it weird when I click on BBC Sport and I see Bournemouth have just broken their transfer record of like 40 million. Like, Bournemouth are spending 40 million quid on a player. It's just a different world, isn't it?
I still think 7 million is a big transfer fee. It's an era thing, maybe. How did the game look from Innsbruck, gents?
Well, I'm the most pessimistic Wrexham fan you can imagine. I thought I was convinced we'd go in there and get hammered about 6-0. But I think that about every match with Wrexham. I'm just so pessimistic. So the first half we played, it was like FA Cup tie. It felt like the getting stuck in and really going for it. It was fantastic performance the first half, very encouraging for myself. But yeah, I think Kiefer Moore coming off was a huge turning point where we just kind of lost our way a little bit, looked a little bit lost in midfield, could do with doing something extra in the midfield. I'm not entirely sure what, but just overall, just hugely encouraged by the whole performance and thinking, hang on a minute, we actually belong here. This is no fluke. We belong here.
Yeah, really impressed with Windass as well. I'd never seen him play before, and the link-up play between him and Moore looked really good already. That was encouraging, considering they would have hardly even trained together, because Moore only just came in. And Lewis O'Brien in midfield thought was fantastic as well. Really good. And from a Welsh point of view, it's interesting to see Danny Ward start, and it did well as well. I mean, I don't think he could have really done anything about either goal, and seemed to command his area pretty well, communicate well, and was coming claiming things. He looked confident. That's an interesting one. I'm sure Craig Bellamy would have had a bit of an eye on that. See how him and Kiefer Moore were doing. I don't know. It's going to be interesting because Leeds have signed a keeper, haven't they? So you'd think probably Darlow will lose his place now they're in the Premier League. So now does Bellamy go with the one who's playing if Ward is going to be the Parky's man in the league? So it'd just be an interesting one to see.
He alternated them, didn't he, for a while, and then seemed to make a decision in terms of Carl Darlow. But it is certainly one of the good. Well, I mean, it's just good to see him playing, I suppose. But Tim, it's such a shame that Joey wasn't around to see that game. I mean, if he'd have, if it was another 3 or 4 weeks, he wouldn't have been well enough to get down there. But he'd have enjoyed that showing, wouldn't he? It'd be a bit of a fist pump, wouldn't it, for the away fans at the end of that, wouldn't there?
There was a nice big tifo that went across the away end as well, so that was a good touch. That's the first of many that's been crowdfunded. So that was nice that he was with us in spirit. I wore my little pin badge of him on my shirt, and he would have loved it, because I remember I did an interview with him for the Spirit of 58 fanzine when Tim did just a standalone fanzine many moons ago, and he was telling me that how really decent a keeper Wardy is, and it's not surprised that him and Neil Taylor have gone on to have the careers they had. So I'm sure he was delighted that Wardy came back and did this full circle moment, and to perform the way he did on Saturday. It's if he keeps performing like that, and if Bellamy does snub him, then I'm going to have to start seriously thinking that there is an anti-Wrexham agenda from the powers, the corridors of power of the FAW down there, because I'm personally delighted to have Welsh representation back in the Wrexham set-off. Yes, we've had to buy them, but we're still playing catch-up in terms of infrastructure, and whilst we'd love to develop players for Wales, which Swansea fans have delighted in reminding me, we've produced this, that and the other. Yeah, it's great, but it hasn't got you anywhere for a while. So, it's swings and roundabouts. So it's just nice to have them involved, and Joey would have loved it. He would have loved it. He probably would have saw a bit of himself in some of these new players, strength and just heart, and going out there and saying, look, just show them what you're made of. Don't show them that you're here just to make up the numbers. You're here because you're here on merit. And you want them to leave that pitch knowing that they've been in a game. And Southampton certainly knew they'd been in a game.
But to a Wales fan then, someone who's looking at it through maybe a national lens, primarily, no skin in the game in terms of the Wrexham particularly. Try to sum up, if you can, really hard question, Tim, but try to sum up, or maybe each of you, but I'll start with Tim, what he means to the club and the town, even though he's from Llandudno originally.
Well, the classic saying that no player is bigger than the club. Joey's the exception to that rule. I think that's probably the best way I can sum it up, is he was bigger than the club in a good way, in that he transcended football. This wasn't just about Joey Jones the football. This is about Joey Jones, the man, the person who nurtured young talent through clubs, every club he was at. No doubt he was speaking to younger players when he was at Liverpool. Even when the players left Wrexham for pastures new, and if they didn't like it, they'd be back at the racecourse speaking to Joey, and he'd be the first person giving them advice, because that's where it all started. So he is just everything to Wrexham. But obviously when his funeral happens next week, there are going to be people from all representatives of his club here, which kind of shows how loved he was. And I broke down when I went to lay my flowers and the tribute at the ground, because I hadn't seen him for ages. But you don't need to see somebody for ages to kind of, truly love somebody, really. And I think there was an outpouring of love. And I said this, like, I genuinely feel like I was mourning a blood relative and not just a public figure. And that kind of shows you, it kind of tells you everything you know about the measure of a man that can have that sort of profound effect on so many people. And that's exactly what he's had, that's exactly what he's had. And he'd probably be churlish about the idea of having a statue and so on. And no doubt, I think probably the training ground is going to be named after. That would be my preference as well. But, the statue is going to be great anyway, because people are going to be going there as a little bit of a thing, going, you know what, Joey, we'll give that raised fist a tap today if the chips are down and we need a bit of luck. So yeah, you can't say enough good things about him. And as Neil Roberts attested to, when we spoke to Neil Roberts last week, he attested that literally nobody had a bad word to say about Joey Jones, and that tells you everything, really.
It's not going to take much thinking, is it? What sort of pose are we going to need for him in the statue?
Yeah.
That's not going to take long to sort out, is it, really? Andy, I mean, you've got a bit more of a personal connection to him, haven't you? But can you sort of sum, again, almost impossible to do, but can you try and sort of summarise a little bit what he means to the town and the club from your perspective?
I see him almost as like an anti-footballer, or like in today's world when you've got, say, for example, I don't want to pick on anyone, but I'm going to pick on Marcus Rashford, for example. He's won nothing. He's got all the money in the world. He's a big head. He's driving his Lamborghinis and all the rest of it. He's got his Louis Vuitton, whatever. It's just complete poser. And then you've got Joey, who's won everything in the game twice, millions of caps for Wales, pure success throughout all his career, loved by the fans, because I think he's just the opposite of what these modern footballers are. He's like so humble, you'd never know that he'd won anything speaking to him. He's more interested in how you're getting on in your under-10s Lex match on Saturday than telling you about his medals that he's got locked away in his gaff, or just honest, hard-working, funny, such a funny person, which obviously is very important. Where you're from, when you're from our neck of the woods, to be funny is very high up in the status of being from Wrexham. If you're not funny, you're not, nobody's really interested in you. So he just had all these human qualities combined with the success that he had, just made him just so lovable to everybody, and everybody genuinely, like Neil Roberts said, nobody said a bad word about Joey. It was just genuine love. There was no bitterness or snide. I never got the feeling people were jealous of him or anything, because it was just pure love for the man. And I've never come across anyone like him in my life, like that.
And Leon, I mean, there's an argument for Ben Davies in an all-time Wales 11 at left back. There is an argument, and I don't think that's unfair. But I think Joey gets it, doesn't he? Surely.
Well, yeah, like considering, I mean, the first Welshman to win the European Cup, and then he was part of this in '77. That was, and then he was part of the Liverpool team that. Well, he was part of the squad at least. I won it the following year as well. So he's got 2 European Cup winners' medals. And then he was the first Welsh player to 70 caps as well. And he overtook Ivor Allchurch's record. And then post-war, he is the only Welsh footballer to have been on the winning side 3 times against England. And I sort of wonder if that will ever happen again, actually. I think it would probably be the last Welsh footballer to be on the winning side 3 times against England. And, some of the games that he played in as well, like he's made his debut in the Austria game in '75, the famous game. It's the only time we've ever topped a qualification group. Even now, even with the massive success we've had in the last 10 years, we've never topped a qualification group, apart from that one occasion. He came into the team, and then then there's that first victory over England at Wembley, '77. He played in that, and then the famous 4-1 in 1980. One of his best performances for Wales was '85 against Scotland at Hampden Park. We hadn't won at Hampden since the 50s, and Scotland were big favourites for that. And they had it was Kenny Dalglish and Mo Johnston up front, and Joey played centre half alongside Kevin Ratcliffe that day, and shut him out. And Ian Rush scored a brilliant goal up the other end. But defensively, that was a fantastic performance as well. So like right through from mid '70s through to mid '80s, he was putting in these fantastic performances for over a decade. And 72 caps. I suppose in this day and age where we've got centurions now, it doesn't sound quite as many. And when you compare it to like the number of caps that Cristiano Ronaldo or Luka Modric have, but we didn't play so many games in those days. There weren't that many international games, and obviously we didn't qualify. We just missed out on tournaments as well. So 72 caps. He was the record caps holder for Wales.
He was. So that game you're talking about was his 65th cap, and I know a lot of people see him obviously as a fullback. Maybe the legs had begun to slow a little bit for him, but I mean that's not a bad centre half partnership. Actually, you've got somebody who's got all the pace in Ratcliffe, and then you've got that wise old head, steady, great in the air, none shall pass. So he was the most capped player that day. But this was and he only had a handful more caps, as you say, to win. I hadn't realised, so I went back. I did touch on this in the last episode, and I had to go back and just double check. And thanks to the Welsh language book of Crysau Cochion by Gwynfor Jones, his 72 caps came in a possible 81 games. So between his first game and his last game, Wales played 81 games, and he only missed, can't do the maths, 9 of them in 11 years. So injuries probably took 1 or 2 out of him. Maybe a suspension or 2.
Oh yeah, he was suspended. Well, that's the thing. The first Wales game I went to was the Spain game, and sadly that was the one after the Scotland game where he was so good. And sadly he was actually suspended for that one. So I never saw him play for Wales. So I would have seen him play a few times for Wrexham.
He loved it, didn't he? He actually loved playing, and he actually retired. So again, we're jumping towards the end of his career here, but he'd retired from Wales, and there was some injury crises towards the end of the 85-86 season. We're going out to Canada for a couple of games as World Cup sort of warm-up fodder for them at their debut World Cup. And Mike England phones him up and says, listen, you wouldn't mind coming back over and have a few caps. And I don't know whether it was maybe a sweetener, I don't know, but he made him captain as well. And that's one of the things I do find slightly, I don't know what's the word, slightly unusual, given the raised fist, that leader of men, that really until those final few caps, he'd only ever captained Wales once. I mean, there are plenty of decent captains in his stead, but I mean, he wouldn't have been you can imagine like a Terry Orrath figure, and then going into the 80s and the captains that we had, when Ratcliffe then took on the captaincy, he'd have been a cracking lieutenant on the field, wouldn't he? You'd have been happy to have had him in your corner.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, the game he was captain for the first time in was against Brazil, if I'm remembering rightly, when Flynn famously scored with a header. Brazil's captain that day was Socrates, the sort of great midfielder, and so everyone wanted Socrates' shirt, and the story is that Dudley Lewis came on for Wales, Swansea defender, with about 5 minutes to go, and just sort of stood right by Socrates for the rest of the game, just because he wanted his shirt, basically. So he got Socrates' shirt and Joey didn't, but he wouldn't have been bothered about that. He wasn't like I don't get the impression he was in it for the shirt swapping. He was just to captain Wales playing against Brazil and to play really well in that game. That would have meant so much to him, I'm sure. But I remember in the build-up, I think it's in his book, he said something like, I think we're going to have to bring 2 balls out onto the field because we won't get a kick at theirs. But no, we did. We played really well, actually, and deserved the draw by all accounts.
Do you remember we spoke to Dave Smallman, and he was talking about that game, the Austria game, and that was obviously at the race course. That would have meant a lot because he'd left Wrexham by the time he made his debut, wouldn't he? He was on Liverpool's books by the time he played in that game. He was only 20, which was often the case in the 70s. It was there was a decent sort of Wrexham contingent in and around the squad in those days. Games at the race course, terrific record there. He came back to Wrexham then after Liverpool. He joined again then. I mean, he couldn't keep him away. But just touching on what you were saying a moment ago, Tim, about and I know we've discussed this previously as well, the perhaps anti-Wrexham bias or the agenda. Even then, someone had to leave Wrexham to get a cap for Wales and had to be on Liverpool's books. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I can't recall that bit with Joey.
It's a long time ago. I mean, it's before all our times, really. And that's the other thing as well. He kind of comes in that 70s, which was a good team, and he bridges it all the way into that kind of like next decent era. A great era qualifies for things, and we kept sort of slipping up. But he was there for a long time. He had a winning record. There's not many players who play that number of games, anywhere near that number of games, who ends up with a winning record. In terms of percentages. It's only just over 50%, but I mean, for a lot of players, they're a lot lower than that for us. So he was part of a couple of successful teams that a couple of different managers put together as well, but for Wales.
Yeah, he was one of those that's always going to be called upon, isn't he? One of the first names down on the team sheet, one of those that kind of like, one of a sort of Chris Gunter of his day, I guess, in that you just knew he was always going to be there no matter what. It doesn't matter whether his leg was hanging off. He'd still play for Wales. So I remember in one of his little anecdotes was, it doesn't matter if you're playing them in tiddlywinks, you always want to beat England in whatever. So that was another thing that was stuck with me, is kind of fierce patriotism for Wales. And I think he even used to do Wales versus England 5-a-sides in training at Wrexham. And he literally never came out on the losing side. He made sure of that. So it kind of tells you everything you need to know.
Just on that, like in regards to, I don't know, sort of maybe a bit of a like anti-Wrexham or a sort of anti sort of North Wales thing. I mean, if people mention that, sometimes you get accused of being a bit churlish or having a chip on your shoulder or something. But I was looking at this the other day and I couldn't actually believe it. But Joey is not in the Welsh Sports Hall of Fame. There's about 200 people in there, and yet the first Welsh footballer to win the European Cup, the first Welsh footballer to 70 caps, is not in the Welsh Sports Hall of Fame. There's a bunch of rugby players I've never heard of in there. I mean, it's a very sort of South Wales centric kind of thing. It's sort of started by rugby people. I think I don't know so much about it, but it just that's a shocker, isn't it? Surely that he never got in the Welsh Sports Hall of Fame.
Start the position.
Yeah, I mean, he'd have to be what's the word, like inaugurated posthumously now, wouldn't he? And but I mean, that needs to happen, obviously. But I mean, that's just mad that it hadn't happened
We'll need
before.
to email Rob Cole, Westgate Media. I've got his email, I think, actually. So yeah, we'll do that.
Right, okay.
We'll do that.
Yeah. Right,
Go on, sorry,
right,
Tim.
pass it
You've got
on,
to say.
Russ.
No, I was going to say that definitely needs to be done, doesn't it? I know some people will argue it's too little, too late, but to be honest, Joey would have been embarrassed if it happened to him whilst he was still here anyway. So it's kind of like the irony is not lost on us that should it happen, though he's no longer with us, that he'd probably be more at peace with that in a strange way. So yeah, it's an odd thing. It's an odd thing, but.
Tim, I know we don't have you for a huge amount this evening, but you mentioned the episode you did with Neil Roberts. There was a lovely, touching tribute on LinkedIn. It's rare that we ever tend to refer to LinkedIn. All the other social media platforms were never LinkedIn. By Neil Taylor. There must be legions. I mean, not just young Welsh players, young English players, young players from anywhere. But in terms of some of the young players that you mentioned Chris Gunter there. Okay, no connection with Wrexham, but this recent crop and the recent success we've had, there are several players that would have had contact with Joey, and for that contact to have had some bearing, the more sort of recent success that we've had.
But it's kind of like a cheesy thing to say, but he was a man of the people. Whether he was out walking his dog, whether he'd not seen me or my dad recently, but there was like a fundraiser thing last year, I want to say, and my dad went to it and Joey was there, and obviously Joey had seen my dad for ages. But he kind of knew him by name. He remembered everybody by name. And my mate spoke to him as well, this fundraiser, and they said, "Oh, how have you been, Joey?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm all right. People keep saying I'm losing my mind, but I don't remember anything." It's just like making wisecracks at every available turn, and I don't know. It's just everybody had something to say. Like we had Brett Ormerod at a live show last week. Brett played at Premier League level, Southampton and Blackpool, and he was really cut up by Joey's passing, really cut up. And he said, "Look, I loved that man. I loved it. And when I came to Wrexham, the first thing I did was get a copy of his autobiography, told him to sign it, and I sat him down and I just went, go." Is that what you mean? So just tell me every story you've got. Because all he wanted to do was sit down and just listen to every story he had, because he knew he had so many. So, whether it's 18-year-olds coming through the ranks or seasoned veterans of yesteryear, they all wanted to know him, and he was more than happy to give up his time. He always saw himself as literally your average Joe. That is basically it. And I'd love to see his autobiography reprinted, maybe like an updated preface or something, because that man's story is worth hearing to more people. Even if it's an audio book, it just needs hearing to the wider public, not just this. Yeah, we know Joey's a man of the people and he's a legend and a great bloke, but I think some stories should be brought to a new generation, and I think that'd be probably another part of a fitting send-off, really.
I don't want to keep any longer than we need to, Tim. Really appreciate your time. I think that's a nice send-off. If that's you done for tonight, I think that's fine.
Also check out, I'm going to do a shameless plug, there's a band called Rockin' Robin, spelt with WWR Rockin' and WR Robin, and I'm part of that. And in the week of Joey's passing, we recorded a updated version of Oh Joey Joey, which I think hopefully encapsulates the kind of spirit and kind of punk attitude. He was a punk footballer, Joey. He was a punk footballer that deserves a punk version of his song. So you can find that in the usual streaming places. So he got the seal of approval from his brother, so that was nice. I really enjoyed the fact that we got the family's kind of approval from it. So yeah,
really appreciate your time, Tim. I'll let you carry on with your evening and a couple of other things you've got on.
Lovely. And we're on YouTube as well if you want to see us take the piss out of each other at length.
Oh, you're far more handsome than us. That's right.
That's why you get the awards.
Cheers, Tim.
Gents, thanks a lot.
Yeah, just talking about Joey's book, Andy, I've got it right in front of me here, and because Andy got me a copy for like Christmas or something years ago as a surprise, and the inscription is "To Leon, you nutter. Good luck and best wishes from Joey Jones." Do you remember that nutter thing, Andy?
That was something to do with Goldie Looking Chain, wasn't it? Or something?
I think it was. We had this like their song "Your Missus Is a Nutter," and they
Yeah.
didn't they play that before the game against England in like 2004, 2005, and dedicate it to Beckham or something because Beckham was playing for.
It was to Victoria Beckham. Well, funnily enough, it's only gone live this last week. It was recorded weeks ago, but I did a podcast with Billy Webb from the Goldie Looking Chain for the organisation Sport and Heritage, and they had like a curated monthly content related to the fashion of sport and heritage and uniforms and fan culture and kit and everything to do with fashion and sport. And him and I had a chat about how they've sponsored but then designed Newport County shirts.
Yeah.
We touched on that episode. But the FAW were kind of like fine with it. It was apparently everybody else just went absolutely insane afterwards.
Like who? Who went insane?
Oh, like the press, the FA.
Oh, the press, of course. Yeah, the press.
But the FAW,
the English
I don't think the FAW had any idea what kind of was going on, or the references were to it. But Joey had his finger on the pulse then in terms of South Wales comedy hip hop acts.
I think I don't know. Andy might have. What was that? What was the story there?
Yeah, I asked him to. Yeah, I just told him to write to Leon, you nutter, from All the Best Joey Jones. So Joey didn't have a clue. Yeah, I don't think Joey was
Goldie Looking Chains.
Goldie Looking Chains. Him and Janice listening to that on an evening. I don't think so. But also I don't know if you remember, Lee. Is that the time when he gave me that shirt to give you as well? Or would that be another time?
Yeah, you'll have to tell that story as well, yeah.
With all the young lads on the estate, Joey would just give shirts and shorts and socks, and he'd just be constantly handing stuff out to people. And I was very lucky that I got many shirts. I'm wearing it now, so I'm wearing one of them, my favourite one now. Actually, I thought it was going to be a video. I was going to show it off. This shirt, it's a black training top from about 2012, something like that. Adidas has got JJ on the front of it. It's my most prized possession. I keep it locked up, so I wore it today especially. But yeah, when I got Joey to sign Leon's book, he said, "Oh yeah, what size is your mate?" It's like, well, small, medium. He just got this big box in his front room. Just looks out like it's like this another mint black training shirt. Yeah, give him that. So I brought that over for Leon as well. Have you still got it, Leon?
Yeah, of course, yeah. Playing it as well. It was the third kit, wasn't it? It was not. I think it wasn't like a training top. It was actually like.
Was it
the black kit? I think, yeah. The one I've got is the Glyndŵr when the university sponsored the team like 15 years ago, something like that. But it's smart. Everyone loves a black football shirt, don't they? So it's just this quality, yeah. And it's just like, just Andy just handed it to me and said, "Oh, Joey says you can have that." I was like, "What?" Yeah, just mad about it. Oh yeah, I only met him once, but so I had a few sort of conversations via Facebook with him, which was always nice, and yeah, some great lines. But saw him at years ago before the takeover. Him and Mickey did a fundraising evening at the Centenary Club next to the racecourse, and so I went along there. I was back home at the time, staying at my mum and dad's, and Joey did a talk, which was just brilliant, absolutely hilarious. And then Mickey went up and did a talk, and then about halfway through Mickey's speech, which was great, the mic failed, as he seems used to in those days, because the club was just, it was just like hand-to-mouth existence, they didn't have pots of piss in, so stuff like, microphones and the PAs were just bit dodgy, and he kind of completely lost his train of thought whilst the mic was getting fixed. So I sort of came and sort of fiddled about with it, gave it a smack on the floor to get it working again, and Mickey's just like, oh, not sure what to do. He just stood there frozen and he was like, oh, where was I again, Joe? He sort of looked out to the crowd, and Joey knew exactly, where he was, and sort of it's that just interesting to see that dynamic between them, because they were like brothers, really. They were. I mean, Mickey said in his tribute when he died, he was my soulmate. I mean, how often does a bloke say that about a friend, a soulmate, you know?
And
like,
particularly that sort of era as well, that sort of age of man as well, to be fair.
Yeah, absolutely. But that was the relationship between them. It was just like, it was deeper than a friendship, as close as two heterosexual men can possibly get, I think, really. The relationship between those two.
If you read Mickey's autobiography, which is cards on the table, I remember picking it up and thinking, right, okay, what's this going to be like? Because he has a certain reputation, and by his own admission, I mean, he's had his moments, and it's really honest. It's searingly honest. I'd highly recommend it. Much better than I was expecting to be. But one of the abiding memories I've got from that is, other than him signing for a club in America, and then people going, "How are you going to get there? Are you going to go by boat?" Because they didn't like flying, and people went, "I don't think anybody sails to America anymore." Anyway, that was funny. Was just how much he idolised Joey Jones. You talk about maybe sort of soulmates. I saw it as like a little brother just looking up to his big brother, but always constantly out of childhood into their 20s, into 30s, forever, just kind of looking up to him, seeking his approval, not in a needy way, but if I've got Joey Jones' approval, then that's all I need. About whether it was footballing decisions, personal decisions, life decisions, all that kind of thing. And of course their career did sort of run in parallel a little bit, both at Chelsea obviously together. Because Joey never left Wrexham, did he? I think I'm right in saying, even when he was playing at Chelsea and Huddersfield and places, he was still, he'd stayed in Wrexham, and obviously he would just sort of, drive down, I guess, and at whatever all hours of the night and day, back and forth from games. Because I know that him and Mickey would sleep. That's what's in Mickey's autobiography. The number of times, rather than go out at the West End or something in London after a Chelsea home game, as much because Mickey knew he'd end up getting into some mischief, they would drive back together. But they would sometimes sleep over in the changing room and then drive back on a Sunday morning, only then to come back down for training, a day or two later. It's a remarkable relationship, as you say.
Yeah, well, I can believe that when I read it in the book, that when they were both at Chelsea, they were both like living in North Wales and just driving down to training every day a lot of the time, and driving back up again. It's mad, but they both loved it. They both loved the area. They were both from the area, and they just that's where they wanted to be. And when they want, even now on social media and stuff, Mickey posts his little videos on the beach at Colwyn Bay and stuff, and it's just. You just see the affection he's got. But it's funny you were saying before as well, like that Mickey looked up to Joey as an older brother, because Mickey's actually a year older than Joey. He's 71, but it was like that. Even though Mickey was older, Joey was the big brother, I suppose, because he was the sensible one in that relationship, anyway.
And the taller one.
And the taller one, yeah, of course.
Andy, you mentioned the estate earlier, so you grew up in Coed Glyn in Wrexham, in the stockbroker belt. And let's be honest, that's Marford, isn't it, I suppose?
The mean streets of Coed Glyn.
So yeah, you grew up in Coed Glyn, not too far from Ferry Road, of course, the old FAW head, or the original FAW head. Well, not the original, but certainly the old and long-standing FAW headquarters in Wrexham. My parents-in-law lived there for a short period of time, and I can remember going back and forth there, and I would see him from time to time walking his dog. And this doesn't offer me any particular insight into Joey's life, because I think everybody in Wrexham has at least seen him once walking his dog. But I was always a little bit too nervous to go up to him, because there was an intensity to him, which is wonderful. The amount of people prior to today, but you yourselves talking stories about, oh yeah, no, come in, give you a shirt, do this, have a chat, remember my dad's name, seemed really approachable. I did think he was a bit intimidating, and maybe that was reputation, perhaps on-field reputation and persona preceding him. But by the sounds of it, Andy, he was, he's pretty approachable and pretty regular and happy to take questions and have a kick about with the kids and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, maybe because from when I can remember, Joey's been my neighbour. So even from when I was like 3, 4, 5, whatever. So he's always been he was always my neighbour. Maybe if I'd met him in later life and I'd heard these stories and everybody talk about Joey, maybe I would have been the same. To be honest, nothing to do with his personality as such, just more the stories and the aura and and the standing he has, maybe that would be intimidating. I don't know, but I can just say from personal experience that he was very approachable, and he seemed to enjoy spending time more with the younger people. I don't know, because he could be a bit funnier, or maybe have a little bit more of a laugh with the youngsters, but still he'd have plenty of be speaking to my mum and dad, because they'd be down Erddig, where he'd be walking his dogs as well. They'd go for walks down there, and he'd stop and chat to everybody. But definitely very approachable, as from what I remember.
But that's an interesting thing you say there about his maybe connection with younger people. Is he seemed to be trusted a lot with young talent and bring it and help and nurture it and bring it through. I mean, I guess he never had any aspirations to be a manager, but obviously he always wanted to be around football, I guess. But there was obviously something there around others seeing in him those sort of qualities that you've just talked about there, Andy.
Obviously, he was the youth team coach for a long time, wasn't he? And he just loved that role. He loved being in with the youngsters. And I also remember, I don't know if you know a gym an old gym in Wrexham called the Sports Connection. It was owned by a chap called Kerry Witchley, like 30 odd years ago or whatever it was. And he'd take the young lads from Wrexham Football Club. He'd take the young lads in there, and I remember him specifically being in there with Steve Cooper doing. You can see him now doing loads of pull-ups, but just in with the young lads, having a laugh and having a joke with the young lads. He seemed to really be in his element most there, I would say. But yeah, he certainly had no aspirations of being a manager. I'm sure he could have, if he wanted to, had a crack at being a manager at some point. I think he was caretaker manager for a few games somewhere down the line. You lads would probably know that better than me. But yeah, definitely with the kids and the youngsters, he was in his element.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the thing is with when Flynn took over at Wrexham, he always wanted two people with him who he could completely trust, and like the three of them just had loads of responsibility. It wasn't like, do you remember like Phil Neal on that Graham Taylor documentary, just repeating everything that the manager said? You know, it's hilarious, but he didn't. Like, absolutely brilliant. That the relationship between Flynn, Kevin Reeves, and Joey was nothing like that, and he completely trusted him. There's like when they did so much of the scouting themselves, because they couldn't afford that many scouts, and there was a story about Joey going up to watch a Middlesbrough reserve game at Ayresome Park, before they moved to Riverside, on a Tuesday night, and just to have a look at a sort of left-sided midfielder they were interested in, because Brian, I hadn't seen him play, and so Joey gets back at 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever from Middlesbrough, having seen just watched this reserve game, and says to Brian the next morning, you should. It's what we need. We should try and get him in. And Brian had never, it was days before, kind of loads of video analysis and all that kind of stuff. And Brian was just like, right, yeah, I'll make the phone call. And he took like straight on the phone to Middlesbrough to try and get the deal done. And Bruce Rioch was their manager at the time, and he wasn't at the office or something. So Brian called someone else he knew at Middlesbrough and said, "Oh, we're interested in doing a deal for." I can't remember the name of the player now, but. Brian just said, "Can you pass the message on to Bruce and get Bruce to call me as soon as possible?" And then later that morning, Bruce Rioch gets in and just calls Brian, just gives him a mouth and says, "What the fuck are you doing talking to my fucking staff about my fucking players? You go, fuck." But like Brian so trusted Joey's opinion about the player that he was prepared to kind of, go behind Bruce Rioch's back, even though him and Bruce Rioch never got on, to try and get this deal done. But, absolutely, there's a bunch of stories like that. And Kevin Reeves as well was the one who saw Lee Trundle and for real and said, yeah, we should sign him. And Brian was like, yeah, I'm going to try and sign him, because Kevin says I should sign him before he'd even seen him play. So that was what that relationship was like. So in a sense, even though he was never the manager, he was still given a load of responsibility, because Flynn trusted him, trusted his opinion, trusted his methods with young players. And they all, just if you listen to Fearless and Devotion, any podcast with young players who come through, like Neil Taylor, Danny Ward, Lee Jones, Neil Roberts, they all just go on and on and on about Joey's influence and just how important he was to their careers.
Do we need to talk about his Wales goal? He only scored one from about 35 yards. Sorry, 35 millimetres.
So what's great about that game, it was 4-4. Okay. 35. Vicky described it as a 35mm pile driver. Yeah.
With his right foot, to be fair, which is the same number of right-footed goals as Gareth Bale scored. For
Yeah. Fair play. Is that? Oh, fair play. That's a good
good start, isn't it? I've been sitting on that one all night, incubating it like a penguin in the Antarctic.
Yeah. It's great footage from that game, Yugoslavia 1982. And the best bit of that game is Joey's tackle from behind on a Yugoslav player after about 1 minute of the game. It's pretty, like you'd see straight red for that now, but like the refs just like, oh yeah, okay, it's a foul, but go on, get up. And the Yugoslav players just on the ground going, what? You're not going to even give me a yellow card for that?
I'm pretty sure he gets up and he does that thing with his hands where... No, I played the ball ref. He does that sort of circular motion with his hands. I'm pretty sure that's it. And I'm not sure the ball is in the frame when he makes contact.
It's not even in the same half, I don't think, as the player.
It was a different era. But if it was dished back to him, he'd have probably just taken it. He went, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah,
wouldn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That was how football was in those days. Things are a little bit different now. Yeah.
A great quote here. He was given, should I say, a samovar, and I had to Google it a moment ago to see what a samovar actually is, and it's basically like a kettle, like a Russian style, sort of Eastern European style kettle, made of maybe brass or copper, which you just heat water in. That's all it is. And he's got a man of a match award against the Soviet Union, as it was then in Wrexham in May '81. And then in the return leg, this is brilliant. In the return leg in Tbilisi, which is that Georgia, I think, these days? Obviously Soviet Union in those days. 5 months later, in the return at Tbilisi, they gave me something else, Oleg blocking. Quote unquote, I wouldn't have caught him if Mike England had put me on a motorbike. So even if he'd have tried to have got the ball metaphorically with his hands doing that circular motion, he wasn't getting anywhere near Oleg blocking. But he is one of our all-time greats, but without ever being, I don't know, Mr. Everybody sort of knows him. Just a constant, one of those constant presences in Welsh football, but without ever being, at the top table, the main man in the hot seat anywhere. Really, just constantly there, steady, reliable, dependable. By the sounds of it, extremely trustworthy, very relatable. No one had a bad word to say against him, but was always quite happy to almost shy away from the limelight. Does that sound about right, Andy?
Definitely, yes. He never went on holiday ever. Didn't go anywhere. They didn't go further than walking the dogs, to be honest. Him and Janice. I think the last time I ever saw Joey was probably just before COVID. Actually, me and my wife, we were in Wrexham, and I popped round to see him just to say hello, because I was taking some chocolates for Janice when I go home, and they invited us in. At the time when we called in, they were busy watching some virtual travel program or something where you sit there. They were sitting on the couch and like pretending that they're in Prague, right, which is a bit weird. And they pretend they put the seatbelt on the plane, and that they played this game that they just pretended that they kind of flew to these different parts of the world, but they never really wanted to go far, whether they had to look after the dogs or not. Certainly not one for the fancy stuff and showing off. They had a very had a little Nissan Duke car, nothing fancy, just very content with just their little day-to-day life of popping to the shops and walking the dogs down, I think. So very unostentatious. Is that the word you're looking? Is that even a word?
I've just checked. He played twice in Prague for Wales and lost both times, so maybe that was why he couldn't be bothered going back. Bad memories. Well, at least twice. Maybe there's another one I've missed. I don't know. But I think that there's also something nice that Joey Jones, the alliteration, he married a Janice, and there was a Janice Jones. That just, I think that's perfect. There's a lovely symmetry there.
Beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah. I'm going around to see JJ. Which one? Sorry, Leon, you were going to say.
He didn't like flying towards the end of his life as well. Because Brian Flynn, when he got the job under Toshak as the youth team manager, wanted Joey to assist him because of, like what we were saying before about how good he is with young players, with young people. Like generally, he would have been perfect for that role to be his assistant. And Joey wanted to do it as well because he wanted to work with, young Gareth Bale, young Aaron Ramsey, young Joe Allen, all that. He would have absolutely thrived off it, but he had to turn it down because he didn't want to fly. That was the reason then Brian got Alan Curtis to do that job as well, which, another Mr. Swansea as opposed to Mr. Wrexham, I suppose. But and Curtis was, great in that job by all accounts as well. But Joey was his first choice for assistant when he got that job in 2004, 2005. But yeah, by that point he didn't really want to go anywhere, like Andy was saying,
Just doing a check now, how many games they played together for Wales. Only 11 times. And, Toshak, by his own admission, picked and chose a few games. Was under a bit of pressure from Liverpool as well to miss a few games. I wonder how that would have gone down with Joey and people like that who missed very, very few. But, maybe you should begin to sort of wrap this up. I know it's late for you guys over there if it's late here. Yeah, much missed. And, I sort of said he's, Ben Davies sort of pushes him hard, but I think I'd have him in my all-time 11. If Davis maybe gets us to another World Cup, and he is de facto captain now. Really, let's be honest. In Aaron Ramsey's continued absence, then maybe he sneaks in there eventually. But he's had to have worked really, really hard. Got a century of caps to get past somebody like Joey, who, as you say, was our record cap between Ivor Churchman and Peter Nicholas. Took it off him in 1991. But much missed, and I can imagine that funeral next week. I think Tim said that'll be a huge event. Presumably, I hadn't seen any reference to it, I'm afraid, but presumably it's going to be in Wrexham. It's not going to be back in, I don't know, Llandudno for argument's sake. Do you know?
They're doing something they're doing like a ticket. I think it's a ticket event at the stadium, at the racecourse, where the general public can go and I don't know what they'll do, some kind of service there. That's on the 20th, I believe, which is a couple of weeks away, 10 days away, something like that. And then there's a private ceremony. The family's Catholic, so I don't know what that means, whether it's cremation or whatever. I don't know any of the details, but the only close friends and family will be going to that. I think they want to keep it very private. So yeah, I'm not too sure about any details about that.
If people are going involved, and I hope that goes as well as these things do. Final words to you both, fellas. I feel like a bit of a sort of an interloper, really, because it's only really through a Wales lens can I admire his career and his humanity and his achievements. But you two with your Wrexham hats on.
We've got a friend here from Swansea called Reese, and he was just sort of messaging me after he heard about Joey's dying, and I said, I don't know if there's ever been a more sort of beloved figure in the history of Wrexham, and as I was saying, I was thinking not just the football club, but the town itself. I don't know, I can't think that there would be a more beloved figure in Wrexham than Joey, quite frankly. I can't think of one.
I'd just say he's left us physically, but I hope the club do something with obviously the statue, and I hope that statue will mean something and people remember, and the stories of him will live on, and I hope people chant. I heard they were singing "Oh Joey Joey" at the Southampton match on Saturday. I hope they continue to do that. I hope people have the shirts with his name on the back, and I just hope I hope he will live forever in the minds and the hearts of the Wrexham and Wales fans.
No, here. So rest in peace, Joey Jones. Gone too soon at 70, and I've enjoyed listening to some of the stories, and I know there's tons of others. Go and check out some of Tim's content, Fearless in Devotion. There's any number of stories there as well, and I know through some of the live events that they've done, they had Joey in a number of times. So I think Joey's probably spoken more at the Mice Gwyn than anybody else in the history of mankind, just over the road from the racecourse. But there strikes me as the sort of person where even though you've heard the stories maybe once or twice, you don't mind listening to again, because it's who is delivering those stories as well, whether that's to do with Wales, whether that's to do with Wrexham. So I imagine Flynn will be back there for it all.
Oh yeah, I haven't spoken to Brian, but they they were good mates, so I've no doubt Brian will be there.
Let's make most of these figures while they're still with us, I suppose, as well. So I had the great pleasure, I think I mentioned this before, talking to Dave Hollins, who was a goalkeeper for Wales in the 60s. So an era and more, maybe before Joey, and he's in his late 80s now. Still sharp as a tack. Being a goalkeeper in that era, you took a bit of a hiding as well, I can imagine, from opposing forwards. So he's got a few sort of bumps and aches and sprains and strains and everything else. But absolute pleasure speaking to him a few months ago now. So let's make the most of these figures while they're still with us. And in my experience, by and large, there's one or two exceptions. One not too far from home actually, in terms of Wrexham actually. And people don't want to talk about their career. They don't want to share the stories. That's it. It's behind them, and I fully respect that. But some of them, most of them, once you get them talking, they love talking about it. And if we can help share some of the stories and the memories and the anecdotes, then more than happy to continue doing it. Andy, it's been a pleasure to meet, in inverted commas, you. You'll have to send a selfie of this, you in this shirt, then to Leon, and you can send it over to me as proof of how lovely these black shirts are.
I will do that now. I'll do it immediately.
Can you send the one from Saturday of you in front of the screen with the Joey Jones with the the Patagonia shirt as well? Yeah, so that's a good one.
Well, I should probably say all the best for the season ahead as well. Yeah, it's a shame he's not around to see it, Joey, but if you believe in these things, he'll be looking down on it all, I'm sure. Gents, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Ross.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
People always let you down. They never need excuses. The next hit's always coming if you run out of your uses. People always want you to be happy and contented. People really must be the most useless things invented. Be careful with your happy thoughts, 'cause you